12, residency 60.
Are we live?
Fellowship.
We are live.
Okay. We'll come back into order, please. And this is the resuming the merits hearing that we started earlier. Leave it at that. I believe we have reached criterion 8 regarding scenic and natural beauty, aesthetic issues, and the historic preservation issues that Scott Dillon testified to briefly earlier in the day. And we, I think, have touched on in the discussion under criterion 1, an issue that crosses over from that criterion here being noise, sound, pollution, and so forth. But we'll try to keep in mind that we've already heard some of that testimony, and I'll ask the applicant to proceed on number 8.
Thank you. So criterion 8 was not intended to prevent all change in Vermont landscape or to guarantee that the view a person sees from his or her property will remain the same forever. Change must come and will come. Criterion 8 was intended to ensure that development does occur and reasonable consideration will be given to the visual impacts of neighboring landowners, the local community, and on special scenic resources of Vermont. To implement criterion 8, the environmental board established 5 questions. The first group of questions are in regards to the project surroundings. So I've touched on this already. To the north, there's about a 250-foot swath of parcel D owned by the town of Essex, currently wooded. To the east, there's a 100-foot buffer that's proposed within the industrial zone land to the industrial zone land east of there, also owned by Allenbrook Development, which is also wooded. To the south of the proposed subdivision is industrial zone land where the solar field exists, owned by SH2. And to the west, there's a 1,300 foot wide portion of parcel D, again owned by the town of Essex, and is currently wooded. The project's located within the Saxon Hill Industrial Park, RPDI district, which was established in 1977. Within that zoning district, we've talked about the 40% development for industrial uses, 60% developed for recreational and conservation uses. These areas were defined in the -20 amendment as known as parcels A and B that total 130 acres, and C and D, which will eventually total 270 acres. Similar subdivisions within the Saxon Hill Industrial Park have taken place. After the -20 amendment was the -21, which approved phase 1, which was an extension of Thompson Drive, the creation of Red Pine Circle and 9 commercial lots, as well as the Saxon Hill Industrial Park is home to Performance Foods, Blodgett, Autumn Harp, IBM, Revision Eyewear, Gordini, and many other small businesses within the park. The projects within Forestdale Heights existing sandpit footprint where existing vegetation was removed, sand was extracted, and a reclamation plan is there currently. The access road from Vermont 117 is generally within the footprint of the existing haul road for the current sandpit operation and historic sandpits. We talked about that's the second Act 50 number that approved that access for the sandpit operations. Chemo Drive has existing overhead lines that service the solar field. Green Mountain Power has an overhead high voltage distribution tower, roughly 700 feet upslope from Vermont 117. There's also existing overhead power within the eastern 100-foot buffer of Saxon Hill Road and its right of way. There's also 3-phase power on Allen Martin Drive, Thompson Drive, Red Pine Circle, Corporate Drive, Sand Hill Road, and Vermont 117. Thompson Drive, Red Pine, and Corporate Drive are all Act 50 projects that approved overhead power. Warehousing is a permitted use within the RPDI district. The second question is the compatibility of the project with its surroundings. So this is the second phase of the stated Saxon Hill Industrial Park since Allenbrook Development's master plan. I touched on phase one being the Thompson Drive Red Pine Circle application. The park is zoned for industrial uses. We certainly comply with the settlement agreement that was approved and by Act 250 as part of the -20 series. And again, that's the first time the 4060 designations were solidified. The warehouse on lot 11 is of size and scale of the existing buildings within the industrial park. It meets the local height requirements. The 250-foot strip north of parcel D, there's a 250-foot strip north of parcel D from the warehouse. There's a 100-foot buffer to the east within the industrial park or within lot 13. And the solar field is south, and to the west is again 1,300 feet within parcel D to the nearest residence. There's existing biking and walking trails within the Saxon Hill Industrial Park. However, I would note that the vast majority of them are north of the phase 2 site. Most of them are generally around the phase 1 area and the sand extraction area. There's also a school-owned parcel just east of the Saxon Hill Industrial Park that has a lot of trails on it. But generally, there aren't trails within the phase 2 area. The only exception is the old Saxon Hill. All road through there is used once in a while. Generally, that pedestrian trail is going to get, or Hall Road is going to get relocated to the 8-foot rec path that's proposed on Chemo Drive. The third part is color and materials. We provided typical building elevations. The buildings are proposed to be similarly constructed as recent buildings on Thompson Drive, Red Pine Circle, and throughout the park. Generally, they're steel frame construction, panelized, and we utilize earth tones. The fourth part is the visibility of the project from different angles. So the subdivision is on a plateau with lot 11 being 186 feet above Vermont 117 and 88 feet above the closest residence on Sand Hill Road. Roughly 2,400 linear feet of Chemo Drive extends in order to reach the commercial lot, substantially removed from 117. On lot, I believe it's 10, the most western point of that lot is roughly 1,500 feet to the nearest residence. The project includes street trees along the frontage of the commercial lots and significant plantings in front of lot 11. You want to pull up our landscaping plan? Up higher. Oh, there you go. Yeah, 35. So in front of lot 11, the town has a standard for a 50-foot buffer along new public roadways within the park. We were granted a waiver by the Town Development Review Board in order to clear that buffer. There's been issues in the past with fragmentation, utilities going through that buffer, curb cuts, grading, and the more recent interpretation of that buffer has been to remove it and replant in its place rather than trying to keep it, especially in this area where that sand pit reclamation, close, tight-knit planting of evergreens where the bottoms are mostly dead and tips are only green at this point. So this is how the town decided to have us propose a landscaping plan that was robust along that typical buffer. And then the building is an additional 50 feet pushed back from that buffer line with the parking in the front. So another piece of this is the high voltage distribution line that crosses Chemo Drive, 700 feet upslope from Vermont 117. The overhead power from this line crosses, the overhead power from this line is overhead to the southern Allen Brook development line. And there's also three-phase power along the Saxon Hill historic right-of-way. We're creating a loop from the Saxon Hill right-of-way overhead line through Chemo Drive and tying that line into the southern part of the property that eventually and hopefully will allow Green Mountain Power to remove a substantial section of that line in the future. We're proposing an 8-foot recreational path along Chemo Drive. Again, the buildings will be visible from the newly created public way, but the building set back, there's a substantial landscaped 50-foot area in between the parking lot and the right of way. So the fifth part relates to the impact on open space. So the -20 approval, the -20 amendment created 270 acres of open space for town-owned land that satisfied the 40-60 ratio in the RPDI. So additional open space is not required as part of this explicit project. So the Quechee Lakes 3-part test to follow. The test is established whether or not an adverse aesthetic impact is undue. Following first part, does the project violate a clear written community standard intended to preserve the aesthetic and natural beauty of the area? The project does not violate a clear written community standard, in our opinion. Municipal plan describes a desirable approach to development. However, the zoning and subdivision regulations are tasked with implementing the town plan's vision and goals. We received DRB approval for both the site plan for the Lot 11 warehouse, as well as the subdivision approval for the Chemo Drive and 5 commercial lots from the town. The town select board previously commented on the -20 amendment application where settlement agreement was being implemented. And part of that letter stated the negotiated settlement agreement presents a more orderly plan for future development that will be better coordinated with the adjacent conserved areas. Part 2 of the test, does the project defend the sensibilities of the average person when viewed as a whole? Is it offensive or shocking because it is out of character with the surroundings or significantly diminishes the scenic qualities of the area? The project does not offend the sensibilities of the average person. It was approved by the DRB. It's consistent with the subdivision and zoning regulations. Warehousing is a permitted use and consistent with the historic uses within the park. The RPDI was established nearly 50 years ago in 1977, has allowed industrial uses since then. The project is proposed within the reclaimed sandpit area for future development as part of the settlement agreement with the town of Essex, and that's in 2 areas of parcel B. Part 3 of the test, has the applicant taken generally available steps which a reasonable person would take to improve the harmony of the proposed project with its natural surroundings? The subdivision is located within a footprint of a prior sand extraction area. It's 186 feet above Vermont 117. It's roughly 2,000 feet of road. In order to get into the industrial park from 117, it's 88 feet above the closest home on Sand Hill Road. That's roughly 2,000 feet away from that home. Lot 11 building is set back, as I described, roughly 100 feet from the right of way. There's substantial plantings, as you can see up on the plan on the screen. The buildings will be constructed with similar styles and materials that are consistent with the industrial park. And we proposed, per town standards, all downcast LED lighting fixtures on buildings, parking lots, and street lights that are required by the town.
Okay.
So for these reasons, we do not believe the project creates an adverse visual impact. However, if the district commission believes there is an adverse impact, we certainly do not believe it's an undue impact. It does not violate the clear community standard. It's not shocking to or offensive to the average person, and the applicants have taken generally available mitigation steps to mitigate any impact.
Do you have anything, on this criterion on noise in addition to what you've already given testimony on?
I do not.
Okay. Do the local approvals say anything about idling trucks? Out back, the trucks unloading and loading is out back, is that right?
Yes, sir. Truck stops are in the rear.
Does the local approval say anything about that? Do you know?
They don't. Likely that wouldn't be in our subdivision approval. It'd likely be handled through a town ordinance.
Okay.
So I know where they've had issues in the past. They put up no parking signs, stuff like that.
Okay. Mr. Carter, do you have any questions for the witness?
Well, maybe one, I think I heard them say, that they didn't have anything additional on noise. So I'd just like to confirm, is it correct that there's nothing specific in the application, regarding the impacts of noise?
So we went through a pretty lengthy piece on noise already, and I don't have anything to add to it.
Okay. So nothing on specific noise modeling was done as part of this application?
Yeah, I don't have additional testimony.
Okay.
Based on what
Oh,
was
sorry. Fair enough, fair enough. Nothing further from me.
Carter, do you have anyone you'd like to present, testify on 8?
I think we covered that before the break, with Mr. Stout, so I don't think we have anything further.
Okay, and Ms. Polvo, you are admitted as a,
Not present.
she's not on anymore? Okay, okay, she was in on 8, okay.
I do believe she submitted an emailed
Yeah.
statement.
Yeah, we have that from her, okay.
Just to let you know as well, Catherine Sonic from the town is, has gone back to the office, but is with us.
Okay, good to
remotely.
know. Right. Collecting my thoughts and don't despair.
Good.
I believe that brings us to criterion 10, compliance with the town and regional plans. Mr. Rushford, you may proceed with any testimony you'd like to put on.
Go ahead. Brian, continue to describe what you've done. Okay.
Is there any particular slide you'd like us to have up there for this?
So there is, town letter was submitted. There is a, town letter from.
I'm thinking of a something visual, not a letter, because we can't read it from here.
No, just I
Okay,
think it's the plan.
Okay.
So the following key principles guide the determination of whether a project complies with a local plan. The first is the determination of non-conformity must be made based upon a specific policy set forth in the plan. And 2, the specific policy must be stated in a language that is clear and unqualified and creates no ambiguity. Number 3 is a broad policy statements phrased as non-regulatory abstractions may not be given the legal force of a zoning bylaw. Within the town plan, there's goals and objectives for each fundamental element of the town plan. Examples, economic development, housing, community facilities, services, etc. The project furthers many of these goals, including on page 9 of the town plan, there's an excerpt that economic development is carried out in the Saxon Hill Industrial Park, with consideration and respect for the natural surroundings. Page 10 of the town plan states, the town should establish and maintain policies and resources to support the retention, expansion, and attraction of businesses using or seeking to use land designated for commercial and industrial uses. A focus should be given to the Champlain Valley Tech Park, the North 60 CVTIP, Saxon Hill Industrial Park, Gauthier Industrial Park, and others. The town letter from the select board regarding the settlement agreement submitted as part of 4C0329-20 states the Saxon Hill Industrial Park sits within the town sewer core and pursuant to the town plan is specifically designated for development and is critical to the town's economic future. In fact, the industrial development of Saxon Hill Industrial Park is encouraged throughout our town plan. The Development Review Board issued findings, again, for the approvals for both the warehouse site plan application and the subdivision for the and construction of Chemo Drive. Within those approval letters of general policy 2 stated as being met, the economic growth shall be diversified with development occurring in and around the town center, Susie Wilson Road corridor, in the Saxon Hill RPDI district. So these are policies and goals within the town plan. Goal 1F, economic development is carried out in the Saxon Hill Industrial Park with consideration and respect for natural surroundings. Another one is specific policy 2S1 that states that there should be assurance that new industrial and commercial development occurs within existing industrial and commercially zoned areas, which is certainly the case here. And the regional plan, where the enterprise planning area, generally described as areas where local zoning authorizes future concentration of employment uses that attract workers from the community, from the county and multi-county region. Development in these planned areas should have adequate sewer capacity and access to transit or be near those services. And we just note that CCRPC did submit a letter, 85, stating the project conforms to the regional plan.
Anything else at this time?
Okay.
Any questions on this? Okay, Mr. Carter, do you have any cross for the witness?
I don't have any cross, that I would like to highlight a few legal points and then offer testimony with Mr. Stark.
But what I expect that we will be putting in the hearing recess order is a request or at least an opportunity for parties to file a legal memoranda covering the issues that have been discussed today. And in particular, I think the commission will be interested in briefing on criterion 10, which we are encountering more frequently in our work. So you may proceed.
Great. Okay. In that case, I would call Mr. Stout again, touch on the town plan in particular and the actual project and how it intersects with the town plan under criteria 10. So Mr.
Go
Stout.
right ahead.
I'm going to be focusing narrowly on the steep slope provision in the town plan. And then I also have a quick follow-up comment on the CCRPC letter with regard to criteria 10. The town plan has a provision, if I gave you the launch number, it was in my written material, page 64 of the 2024 Essex town plan. has a box at the bottom, a green box, and it has different standards for different slopes. And states that for slopes of 20% and steeper, quote, construction shall be avoided due to the likelihood of environmental damage. I'm not offering any testimony as to how that should be interpreted. It just is what it is. So I was then asked, does the project disturb any 20% or steeper slopes? So I produced the two exhibits that were attachment B and C to my testimony. We can bring them up if you want to discuss them, but they are what they are. And in that, I highlighted basically the steep slopes that are along the access road. Some of those steep slopes are natural. They are the side slopes of that ridge that's providing access. And it's the same little ridges you see all along Vermont 117, going from the floodplain up to the same plane that you see through the water area of Essex. And they are challenging to deal with because you got to snake a road up there if you're going to use that as your access. In order to build their new road, as they indicated before, they had to dig deeper to make up for the 3% slope at the bottom. They also had to add a recreation path in next to it. And then they did 4-on-1 side slopes. By the time you do all of that, you are digging into the tops of the steeper natural slopes, particularly on the southeast flank of that ridge. So the side opposite where those two houses are and where that power tower was. Sorry for the pun there. The existing haul road was also dug out of that ridge and also has greater than 20% slopes. Virtually all of that's going to be re-dug up, disturbed as part of putting in the new road. But the emphasis is that they are starting to encroach on the natural 20% steeper slopes. And on the plan, on my plan, if you explore this deeper, the natural ones I put in a light red color. I did the man-made slopes in a magenta color. On the light red natural slopes, I drew a solid red line at where I saw the edge of the impact of their grading onto the top of those steep slopes, where they're basically grabbing the top of it and pulling it back in. This is purely a technical analysis. I'm not providing any evaluation whether those slopes are good, bad, or anything else. And the only thing I would point out is that there was testimony about the town having planned for this to be an industrial area. And that may be true of the where the lots are located. I don't know the extent to which that was envisioned to have access coming down to Vermont 117 and having a road come down this steep ridgeline. And so I'm not sure you can make the leap of faith that that they assumed the 20% rule wouldn't apply to this project just because the area up on top is relatively flat. And then finally on the CCRPC, their letter makes it out as if they're signing off on the project. But their sentence at the end of their letter makes it very clear if there are changes, if there's more information, we want the opportunity to explore that. And what I would argue is that the additional information that I provided you on traffic in terms of the distribution of the traffic over the region's highway network, as well as the concerns about the left turn exit and the number of trips that may try to go through that intersection, depending on the specific use that goes into this park, I think they need to follow up on that and offer some additional testimony as to, whether they stand by their, we don't care. If in fact there's going to be a 2-shift project in here with vans and employees changing hands in the mid-afternoon hour.
We've got 2 hands raised.
Line?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Stout?
No.
Who do we have online who would like to ask a question or speak their own testimony?
Gina Barrett and Ken Signorello and Lorraine Zaloom, who I believe all are preliminarily granted party status.
Mr. Signorello, would you like to share something with us?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question of the applicant. The applicant mentioned 2 things from the town plan. I believe that's the criteria under which I'm granted status. One was that the town plan asks for economic diversity. And so the first question is, how does the current subdivision and the initial application development add to the diversity in the industrial park? That's the first question. The second question has to do with what measures, since it was mentioned by the applicant that the requirement from the town plan and the zoning regulations is that the RPDI, which is not standard industrial, but a special resource preservation district industrial, has an additional requirement not otherwise present in a normal industrial zone, that development be in keeping with the natural surroundings. So the question is, how does the proposal address that concern and in fact maintain the project within keeping within the natural surroundings? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Courier, do you have those questions in mind and can you respond?
Yeah, so the general policy statement too, that was referenced in our DRB approval, it speaks to diversity within many different areas of the town. It says economic growth shall be diversified with development occurring in and around Essex Town Center, such and such, Saxon Hill, our PDI district. It's not specific to that district. As I say, diversity can also be considered the size of the lots. A lot of these industrial parks have been built out. There's a lot of small lots. Like Corporate Drive is a different opportunity. So I feel that's how it benefits some diversity, but the general policy statement also states it's townwide, not just specific to this property. And then the piece about the natural surroundings, I think that's something that we've covered quite a bit today. And in my opinion, that's the 40-60 split. 270 acres was conserved and dedicated to the town of Essex, and in return, 130 acres was left for industrial development.
So my question was, how does this project add to the diversity? And you basically explained what diversity means to you. So my question remains, how does this project add to the diversity, the economic diversity in this area? Or does it just lessen it?
Do you have anything else you'd like to offer?
No.
And I think Mr. Signorello, I think the witness sort of standing on his testimony.
I understand. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time and you're listening to the interested parties. Thank you.
You bet. Who?
So we have Gina Barrett.
Ms. Barrett, you have the floor.
Okay, hi, thank you. I kind of wanted to speak on criterion 8, which I also was granted. So it kind of blends with 8 and 10. For the 50-foot buffers, when they first proposed, as far as in harmony with the natural surrounding, which is the unique industrial requirement of RPDI, Resource Preservation District, with some industrial in it, they applied for a blanket waiver of all the 50-foot buffers on every lot before even proposing the site plans. So the intent doesn't seem to be in harmony to me. And as a neighbor living on Sand Hill Road with the 200-foot buffer behind my house, if you walk in there, which I do often because I live right here, there's probably at least a 20-foot swath within the 200-foot buffer where the sewer is. So that's been clear cut. So we've lost that protection from visual and sound and air and groundwater cleansing that trees provide. And also within Corporate Drive, as they build out at this rapid pace, the initial lots were within harmony to me. When the IBM build was behind my house, the trees went right up to the building. On the intro to Corporate Drive and on Thompson Drive, the trees are built right up to the building. As you move in, all those 50-foot buffers seem to be gone or minimalized, and there's no teeth to holding people accountable for not building up the 50-foot buffer to protect the neighborhoods anymore. So our view from Sand Hill Road, we can now see right through, which we couldn't before. We hear sounds at all times. There's trucks behind your house, and the sound then bounces off all these buildings right into our neighborhoods. And there's additional things that happen on these warehouses, like the one behind my house has a liquid nitrogen tank. And that sound from that is 24/7 whistling into our backyard, just 200 feet from our backyard. A lot of these buildings don't recognize that there is a neighborhood right up against them, and there's homes and schools and parks right on the other side of these buffers. So without these 50-foot buffers, it is no longer in harmony with the natural surrounding environment. These are big, giant square warehouses where the community had just voted and decided that we wanted it to be recreation and a place where people could go mountain biking and go for walks. And right now it's so stark with these giant warehouses and giant trucks riding by people who are trying to bike and walk and use the land that is preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Lorraine,
Ms. Zaloon, would you like to address us on this one?
Yes, please. And thank you, Chair. I live at 74 Center Road, Essex. I've been in there a number of times. Again, I walk the area. I've lived here for a long time. And quite frankly, I was born and raised in the area. I left for a long time, came back, and I've been back for around 10 years. And I have to say, I am an average person, I believe. And I have to say, it is quite shocking to me when I go in there now. In harmony, there's no in harmony. The RPDI specifically states it is not, by the way, it is not industrial. It is a qualified industrial area. So I chaff whenever I hear the word industrial. It is not an industrial area. It's a resource preservation district specifically designed to preserve resources for a reason. Those trees were planted there for a reason. The applicant even states that it was there to prevent erosion. And again, with the floodplains below. So when I go in and I see it, I was on the site visit with you gentlemen, with you, sir, and I was quite shocked to see what's gone. The requirement was visual screening as well, and the visual screening has been slowly at the 50-foot buffers that have continually waived. We're at 20 plus waivers now waived by our own town to allow the visual screening to go. And when you go to the parts that are kept, that the 50-foot buffers are kept, it is quite clear that stark differences. The other part in terms of the visual screening is that some of the planned replantings were deciduous and few. And so the fragmentation has been caused by the approvals. and so they rely on those previous waivers as a reason to continue to waive. And again, I'm quite shocked by the whole thing. And in terms of our town plan, it also says it shall, as the applicant read, shall diversify the economy. Economic diversity is required. The applicant for one of these sites was Amazon. And given that it was Amazon, I do not understand how that is considered diversified in any step of the imagination. Other than, I guess he's saying relying on the warehouse size, but there's already warehouses that size, I guess, unfortunately, which shouldn't have been approved. And economically, when we look at the jobs, the type of jobs that were offered, they're not upwardly mobile jobs. They're not jobs that are well paying. They're not jobs, certainly that I grew up with IBM, that offer a lot of economic opportunity for people to move up. So I don't see this as economic. And by the way, we already receive our Amazon packages with 3 different providers. So I don't understand how that's economically diverse either. So it's interesting to hear what the definition from the applicant is on economic diversity. Personally, I have requested and have not heard back from our town manager and our community development director, who was here earlier, have not seen any request for an economic impact study. And for what looks to me like was being planned, given that the applicant has also recently purchased the abutting 300 acres in the industrial zone, it seems to me they're looking to build a complex. And I'm very concerned about the economic diversity, very concerned about the safety, very concerned about the impact on our town, very concerned that my taxes will continue to rise in terms of what has gone in there, because my taxes have not gone down over the 10 years that we have added industry into this area. And certainly when I hear the elders speak, they speak to the economic need of developing this area. I'm good with developing. I am very good with development, by the way. I like development, but I'm not good with development where we're blind and we don't know what's going to happen, and there's no proof of economic diversity. We continue to build things that not only don't reduce my taxes, but increase my taxes because it increases our staff needs and increases the impacts on our roads and our other services. So in terms of economic diversity, I have major concerns, and I have major concerns about the applicant sharing information in good faith. I've also asked our town manager for the proposal for a new road to go through to the abutting area, and he won't share that information with me. So I have concerns, and I appreciate your time during this hearing. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Cheryl Van Epps, who also has preliminary party status under 10, has raised her hand as well.
Okay, Ms. Van Epps, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. This is Cheryl Van Epps. I want to dovetail on this last comment. When I think of diversification of my economy, I think of meeting needs of the townspeople. I think of services that we have a backlog, a waiting time to be for our home repairs, for our auto repairs. As it is, when we take in our auto to just have the tires changed, I have to drop off the car and wait for 2 days uh, until they finish and call me that the car's ready to be picked up. I imagine with this development, I am going to be waiting a lot longer, and we need that car for work. So that's something I'm concerned about. So economic diversity, we need more folks in healthcare, mental health, medical health, education. We need those jobs to as diversification of our economy. I don't see diversification as more warehouses and more delivery services. And I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay. Rushford, do you have any rebuttal testimony you'd like to offer on any of the above?
Mr. Carrier, if we could.
Yeah, so just speaking on the diversity piece of, again, we touched on, the fact that lot sizes are typical on, what you'd see and what you typically see in town. It's not just the size, it's the fact that they're undeveloped. Meaning that any of the permitted and conditional uses within the RPDI that are, generally different as it is an industrial district. They are different than the other areas mentioned in the town plan, the Essex Town Center. Typically there's residential uses above commercial uses there, certainly not industrial. Suzie Wilson Road, there's a lot of residential on the corridor, but certainly not industrial. The Saxon Hill Industrial Park, RPDI, has specific permitted and conditional uses that are unique to that area, that there just aren't significant undeveloped parcels. And, any of those uses could potentially come into these lots, right? It could be daycares allowed use, light industrial. There's a ton of opportunities for what that may be. And each one of those types of uses will have different types of jobs. And given the fact that the entirety of the industrial park isn't being built on by a single employer, like IBM and Essex has a history of, if a single employer, is going through a downtrend, typically the whole town, could suffer from that. So I think it lends to diversity in many different ways.
Could I ask some questions on the responding to Mr. Stout?
You may.
So, first question is, as you've analyzed the work that you're doing, are the 20% areas that will get, first of all, did you avoid as best you could those areas in designing the road?
Certainly. Yes, we avoided to the greatest extent practical 20% slopes in grade.
And what protections will be in place to protect those areas, through the construction and after the construction?
So we worked closely with the Department of Public Works to develop a specific erosion control plan for these areas. Essentially, we're proposing to impact an area that's consistent with the hydro seeding area that comes in a tanker truck. So we're starting from the top of the plateau and working our way down, rather than starting from the bottom and working our way up, where erosion potential could be to wash things downhill, obviously. So we're starting at the top, working down, and we're only opening up limited areas at a time, getting the slopes seeded, mulch, hydro seed, erosion mattings, straw wattles. It's pretty explicit for constructing this section of the roadway in a very, purposeful manner. And we presented that plan to the stormwater program. We have received our construction general permit for it.
And how about after construction? Are there any concerns about these slope areas under the stormwater plan for the project?
No, hydro seeding is shown to produce a very vigorous type of vegetation that holds up very well too.
And how about within the road? Is there any concern of water coming out of the road into these areas?
No, so it's a curved road with a catch basin network designed to keep the water on the paved surface, put it in pipes underground the road, underneath the road, and convey that water to our infiltration basin that's proposed at the bottom of the road, adjacent to 117.
And was this construction reviewed by the town engineer?
Certainly.
And did this 20% issue come up during the DRB review of site plan of subdivision?
It did not as a concern, no.
No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Carter, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, yes, please. Maybe one or two, just very briefly. I just want to make sure I understood what you said a moment ago. I thought I heard you say that the plan attempts to minimize impact on 20% slopes. Is that accurate? Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, we're proposing the road alignment in the least impactful manner that's possible.
Okay, does the road alignment impact 20% slopes or slopes that are 20% or greater as currently proposed?
Yes, it impacts, primarily man-made slopes that have been there since the Hall Road was originally installed and then was upgraded when the solar panels were there.
Okay.
Primarily, but it does reach slightly into natural ones, but primarily it does a great job at avoiding, to the greatest extent practical, yes.
Okay. I don't think anything further. Thank you.
I think the commission is going to take a 5-minute recess to huddle in the other room and see if we have anything else we want to cover Okay, we're back on the record. Are we back on the record? Okay. I think that how we're gonna conclude, I want to give an opportunity to counsel for the applicant, counsel for at least most of the people with party status for some brief closing remarks, if you wish to offer them. And then I will say something about the hearing resource order and the next steps.
Sure, I think, thank you for your time today. But stand on the testimony, I won't regurgitate any of that. Things I want to just make sure are clear that the B-Trans had put in some proposed conditions in their letter, post-construction monitoring and employee surveys, and obviously the mitigation fee. I just want to make clear that those are acceptable to the applicant. I think
Are you saying that they are?
they are acceptable to the applicant. And then we also mentioned, the applicant will be fine with a condition that, a covenant requiring tenants and owners to not allow unmuffled, trucks coming down the road, no unmuffled Jake brakes, although the Jacobs company doesn't like that word, they like engine brakes. That's generic. So Kleenex versus state facial tissue. So, that type of condition will be fine, as well. And obviously we're not pleased to submit proposed findings, answer any questions you have.
Mr. Carter.
Just very briefly, thanks to the commission, thanks everyone for being here, participating in the process. I think I would just highlight a couple of key points, and I've made them already, so I won't belabor them. I'm not going to rehash the testimony, other than to point out that the, recognize that some of the testimony touched on the Amazon project, which I think is the elephant in the room. Respect that at this point, the commission isn't focused on that, but we do believe that this sort of piecemeal segmented review is unlawful because the Amazon project in particular is not speculatory. That is again coming from the Quechee Lakes Corporation case, the NRV rules, and others, right? That it's so settled in intention and purpose that it can be called ready to commence. And we think that that's the case here and should be part of this application and part of the conversation. We'd certainly be happy to provide additional briefing on that issue of segmented piecemeal review if the commission would like. I'd also just point out, I think we heard today from the testimony that the applicant failed to meet their burden of production and persuasion under criterion 1 and criterion 8. And I think at the end, an admission that they are doing construction and development on slopes that are steeper than 20%, which, as we said, is counter to the town plan under criterion 10. But again, I thank the commission for its time and for everybody's participation in the process. We have nothing.
Thank you both. We will reflect on the testimony and the other evidence presented today. We are likely to issue a hearing recess order before the end of next week, which keeps the record open until we have received all of those materials and deliberated and made a decision. So we may be asking for supplemental information, as I've hinted earlier on, and allow parties an additional short period of time to respond to what the other party has submitted, if they wish to do so. We will then consider the record to be final and we'll deliberate and issue our decision as expeditiously as possible and as we can all agree. If there are no further comments, the hearing is now in recess. Thank you.
Thank you.